So if all I wanted is the value of a bond, this is all I need, okay? So let's ask the following. Let me post this as it is, so if you want to work on it, you can. I'm going to call this bond template. This is a macro-enabled workbook. Now let me post it on Blackboard. This will eventually be posted with the lecture notes, but for you guys to use it now, I'll post it on the course documents. So any bond valuation problem, you can do it with this template. And we're gonna do, a few different types. So let's suppose you will issue a zero coupon bond with a $10,000 face value and yield to maturity is 8% with semi-annual compounding. How much this bond would be worth if it is to mature in 50 years. All I have to do is, let me zoom it a little bit more since I have the room. Let me also change. I'm not in, this is red light, so I'm basically calculating the bond value. Coupon frequency, it's semi-annual, so it's 2. Face value, 10,000. How long until it's going to mature? 50 years. Coupon rate, 0. Yield to maturity, 8%. So you would pay actually only $198 for this bond. In return, you're going to wait and twiddle your thumbs for 50 years, but 50 years from now, you will get back $10,000. That's the promise of the bond.
That's really a long time.
Huh?
That's really a long time.
Yeah, but those bonds are tradable in the market.
Okay.
For example, 10 years from now, assuming interest rates didn't change, how much this bond would be worth? What do you guys think? If you download the thing, you can calculate it. What do I need to do to figure out, assuming interest rates remain the same, what do I need to do to figure out how much this bond would be worth 10 years from now? There's only one thing I'm going to do. "10 years from now, what do I know about this bond?" It's still paying 0 coupon, so coupon rate is the same. Semi-annual compounding is the same. Face value is the same. There is only one thing that changed, because I told you interest rates are the same as well. There is only one thing that's changed.
It's just gonna be 10 years closer to.
Exactly. So what's the number of years to maturity at that point?
40.
40. So that's all I have to do. Make that 40. So 10 years from now, in a fair market, this bond is going to be worth 433. So if you want to get rid of it, you can.
Yeah, I thought, if you bought it like 20 years old, can't just say.
But certain pension funds do that.
Yeah.
Let's say I'm a pension fund. I have people that start now. 50-year bonds are relatively rare. It's typically 30, 40, the longest ones. Someone who just started, they're 25, let's say. These guys are going to retire when they're 65, right? And I know what kind of promises I made to them. So if it's kind of a fixed rate promise, I'm going to go ahead and buy a 40-year instrument and just keep it there. Because I know exactly how much I'm going to get 40 years from now. And I know how much I'm going to pay that guy 40 years from now in terms of pension. Yes.
So you said like IBM issued the 50-year bonds in the 80s, right?
Mm-hmm.
What happens if IBM ceases to exist tomorrow?
If they go bankrupt,
Yeah.
you get nothing. Or typically in bankruptcy, bondholders rarely get nothing. It goes to bankruptcy court, and bankruptcy court sells or liquidates the assets, and depending upon your priority, you get something. Typically, it's the stockholders that's stuck with nothing. Or sometimes bondholders look at it and they say, if you liquidate the assets, we're going to get maybe 20 cents on the dollar. They say, how about we basically take the company over? A lot of times, keeping the company going is worth more than liquidating it. So it depends. That's why, which is something we're going to talk briefly about. We'll talk more about those in upper level finance classes. There's a difference between treasury bonds and corporate bonds. Can you ever imagine the US Treasury defaulting on its bonds? No. Why? Because it is denominated in a currency that it has the authority to print. We had these debt limit discussions, right? I mean, theoretically, US is kind of weird. Most countries, the Federal Reserve prints both the coins, the central bank prints the currency, but central bank is run by the treasuries. In US, Federal Reserve is technically a private entity, okay? That has a mandate to run the monetary policy of the United States, but it's a private entity. Treasury cannot simply tell Federal Reserve to print extra dollars so that they can pay. But one thing Treasury can do, they can mint coins. And there is nothing in law that prevents them from minting a coin that says this is worth $1 trillion.
I was going to say, is that why there's the discussion on the $1 trillion?
Oh, yeah. This started back in 2011, where we came this close to default because Republicans were adamant not increasing the debt limit. And Obama was going to pull the trigger on that. Because there is no way you're going to let the US government default. Because that would have created a situation where you would have thought the Great Depression of 1930s was heavenly. It would have been that bad. It would have been a global depression. It probably would have ended up, the Third World War. Because every country would have seen GDP declines of 20 to 30%.
So they all trade with the dollar, right?
They all trade with the dollars.
No.
And the US government says, no, thank you, we're not paying you anymore. If somebody is not paying you, what do? You take him to court, right?
Take it by force.
Or you put, or as we say in the Corleone family, we make them an offer they can't refuse. You guys ever remember that line? This says Al Pacino is telling his girlfriend a story about his father. There was a singer over there. There was a band leader who wouldn't let him out of his contract. He says, my father visited him and, he let him out of his contract. He says, what did he do? He says, my father made him an offer he couldn't refuse. He says, how? He says, he has a bodyguard. He's a big guy. His name is Luca Brasi. He says, he took Luca Brasi with him the next day, and he said, either his signature or his brains would be on the paper. That's an offer you can't refuse. That's the euphemism. But the equivalent of that is war, right? Russia wanted some of the lands in eastern Ukraine, right? And Ukraine wouldn't give it. Without going into who's right, who's wrong, when you couldn't resolve it, war. That's what happened. Which was a stupid decision on Russia's part, but